She's not getting my vote unless she can permanently cease fire in Gaza and stop sending weapons to kill innocent children and babies.
Welcome back to the Dvory Darkins Show. And in this video, we're talking about the protesters who are at the DNC that are for Palestine. They have broken through the barriers that the police have put up for security reasons, of course, and that they just don't want their voices heard. They want their demands met. And Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, they've been very soft on this issue. These protesters, they want a ceasefire like yesterday. And so this is becoming a huge distraction to her campaign. This is why they've been trying to sweep it under the rug. This is why they went with Tim Walz and not Josh Shapiro. These protesters, they are not happy. Words are not going to cut it anymore because Biden burned that bridge. Action is what they are requiring. Now, obviously, I could show you better than I can tell you. And so we got to take a look at this. Roll it.
But you've got thousands of protesters on the streets wanting to hear more.
Well, that's often true in foreign affairs and national security. There are things going on that you can't necessarily talk about publicly. But I think on this, she's been quite public about where she hopes to get to. She's been very vocal that she wants to see a ceasefire now, that she wants to see hostages released. She has spent a lot of time making very clear that that's what President Biden and the administration are pushing for. The Democratic Party is a big party. It's a big tent. People are going to speak up and be heard. That's all right. I think you've heard her handle it both with strength, as I would argue the clip that you showed before we started talking demonstrates, but also you've seen her really be clear that she ultimately shares their goal. And at the end of the day, if you are somebody who's protesting the DNC because you're frustrated about where things stand in Gaza and Israel, Donald Trump, as president, who has said that we need to go into Gaza and finish the job, is not a viable option for you. And
hold on. Go into Gaza and finish the job. This is how they reach, right? They stretch the truth. No, he says that Israel needs to wrap it up. They need to get this over with because people are dying. He said that over and over and over again.
And when I'm back in the Oval Office, I will support Israel's right to win its war on terror. They have to have a right to win the war. Thank you. And I will give Israel the support that it needs to win, but I do want them to win fast. Wouldn't it be nice if they could win fast? And we have to let them win fast. To our enemies around the world, we want our hostages back, and they better be back before I assume office.
And this is the other point really quick. She is bending the knee to a small percentage of the Democratic Party who is pro-Palestine, okay? That is what she's doing. She doesn't necessarily need them to win the election, by the way, but that's what she's doing. And she's only pushing away Jewish Americans who support Israel, which is why you're not going to see Congressman John Fetterman there because he's pro-Israel and he does not like how the Democratic Party has handled this.
so I would really say to these protesters, look at what Kamala Harris is trying to do to get to a ceasefire and listen to what she has to say, because she has been very, very vocal about that.
When you say shares their goal, whose goal exactly? Because some of these people on the street, I can assure you, do not have goals that you want inside the tent of the Democratic Party.
I agree with that.
In fact, I would say most of them don't.
Some do, and some have said incredibly anti-Semitic things, which she has called out. Some have defaced property, which you remember I think the day after the property was defaced at Union Station, she put out a really forceful statement about it. Absolutely. But broadly speaking, the cohort of people who want to see a ceasefire in Israel and Gaza, she shares that goal.
I mean, this is largely an inside the Democratic Party conversation.
Okay, so you see how these Democratic surrogates are trying to spin this issue that's happening within their party to the point where there's over 100,000 people marching on the DNC. So this is not necessarily a small issue.
Some of the thousands of delegates say they are remaining uncommitted as a protest over U.S. support for Israel.
We've got 30 uncommitted delegates that are representing over 740,000 uncommitted voters nationwide who voted uncommitted as a pro-peace, anti-war vote in the Democratic primary.
Piggy, piggy, go back home! Piggy, piggy, go back home! Or we'll bring the war home! Piggy, piggy, go back home!
Yeah, so you guys can see the signs, Free Palestine. You've got Biden's face here. They're calling him a terrorist. You know, it's not good. This is not good for the Democratic Party. It's not good for our country, of course. It's not good for what they're trying to do at the DNC right now, but this is the reality. And this is something they've been trying to ignore and sweep under the rug since October 7th, because President Biden and Kamala Harris, they've absolutely botched this. Why would this happen in the first place? It would happen because people know America is not really going to do much about it right now. Not while Biden is the president, which is why a ceasefire hasn't happened. And when you have people on your side of things calling this out, people who want you to win the presidency, I'm talking about Democrats who want Kamala Harris to become the president, when they are calling this out, you probably have some problem on your hands. Let's listen to that.
Here we are in Chicago, and we're finally seeing all of this come together. And Vice President Kamala Harris is being greeted by, I guess you could say it was predictable, but are you surprised at how many potentially could be here?
I am surprised at the vehemence and the numbers, Harris. I also participated in what was called the celebratory 96 convention, which helped my client Bill Clinton won. And I also remember 68, which played a singular role in the defeat of Hubert Humphrey in that year's election. So this could be decisive, Harris. And I would say what Alderman Lopez said reflects the broad feeling of much, not all, but much of the Democratic Party.
So what is the point of courting this part of the party? I mean, really, when you look percentage-wise, can Democrats win without them is one question. And the other is, can you ever really satiate them? Can you ever really be enough as Kamala Harris, vice president for 3.5 years, to suddenly flip the switch to do something these people want that she hasn't already done?
Harris, those are great questions. First, you can never sate these people. They want Israel eliminated. They want to kill the Jews. The vast majority are anti-Semites. And to your first question, as a practical political analyst, you're darn straight you can win without them.
Yeah, that's like the first big thing about this entire situation for Kamala Harris, is she's trying to pander or cater to a small selection of this Democratic Party that really isn't going to decide on whether or not she's going to win this election. And I think it's one of the biggest mistakes that her campaign has made by skipping over Josh Shapiro. You guys have heard me talk about this quite a bit. And doing so, they kind of avoided something that would just trigger that base even more, right? And that part of their base, they only have one goal right now. That is to get a ceasefire done. And this current administration has not been able to do that.
And again, the question is, what does she do and say here on the ground? Because you can't just ignore it. Let's move to this. Some headlines today. The radical protesters who plan to shut down the DNC for Gaza. And from the New York Post editorial board, there's this: Dems deserve the anti-Israel rioters they have created. What is your thought about what Republicans can do in this moment?
Well, I thought what President Trump said last week about standing up for Israel, resisting Hamas, Hezbollah, the Iranians, the Houthi rebels, was a very good and constructive statement. And to go directly to your question, Kamala Harris has to indicate by word and deed that she supports those policies, that she is not trying to play it down the middle. No, I don't, and I'm worried about that, and it makes me doubt my party in the same way I did in 2016.
That's the problem. That's why I keep telling you guys, if you're a Trump supporter and you're kind of worried about these polls that have been coming out, you have to understand the Democrats are in a bad position right now. I mean, the Democrats are not in the position they'd rather be in. They're in a position that they just have to be in, okay? Understand something. They tried to impeach Trump. They failed on that. Then they tried to send him to prison. They failed on that. Then they tried to bankrupt him. They failed on that. They tried to assassinate him. They failed on that. They tried to make sure that they were going to have an open convention to put the best candidate forward for their party. They failed on that. So the Democrats are not in the best possible position for themselves. This isn't really where they want it to be. If they could go back, they would. And we still have the debate that's coming. And the bottom line is this anti-Israel thing is not going to go away, especially if there's not a ceasefire, especially if Iran does retaliate in a very aggressive manner. This is not going to go away whatsoever. So what does Chicago do, right? Chicago, what they're trying to do is board up the place and prevent chaos from erupting, which is why you see things like this.
If you look behind me over my shoulder, you'll notice those fences and snowplows in place. We've actually watched all morning as they have started to bring in more metal fencing, more barricades, and these snowplows have been kind of navigating around those barricades and getting into place around the UC.
Yeah, looks like a logical security step for the people at the DNC. But according to what happened this morning, it's looking like it's not working. Okay, so let's just pause really quick. So on the right side of the video, you see the barrier that they had put up, which was in that news clip I just showed you. And then to the left is where you see the actual police, where this is the actual inner barrier. Okay, so they have like a 2-layer approach. And this is where you see all the police lined up. Again, that's not going to stop people from doing what they want to do, which leads us to this clip.
Stop the fucking war, that's it, man. That's all. That's all, nothing else. It's not impossible. Stop sitting liquid. Killing children, man.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's only a matter of time. They will breach it, especially if more people continue to show up and they don't feel like their demands are being met. And listen, it's a reality because you have people who are vocally saying they're not going to vote for her unless she does X, Y, or Z, like this lady.
Are you going to support Kamala Harris? Are you uncommitted?
She's not getting my vote unless she can permanently cease fire in Gaza and stop sending weapons to kill innocent children and babies.
Yeah, so you guys seen that. The protests are going to continue to grow. The patience is going to run out. And that really leaves us with 3 things we need to take away from this video. Number 1, this is an issue that the Democratic Party cannot ignore. And they're going to lose either way that they go. So if they decide to back Israel 100% and publicly come out and say that officially, I'm talking about from President Biden to Kamala Harris, the entire party, they're going to obviously piss off this part of their party. And we don't necessarily know what their reaction will be. We know what they've done up to this point, which included the riots on different university campuses that did lead to campuses being vandalized, people actually being injured. We also have seen where they went to Union Station at the Capitol, tore down the American flag, burned it to pieces, and then put up the Palestine flag. We've seen that. And now what we're witnessing is they're not just going to stand behind the barrier. They will want to get to the actual DNC building to get their voice heard. So, you know, that is one thing there. The second thing is this. President Trump obviously has the support of Israel. He supports Israel, but he makes a good point every time he brings them up, which is they need to wrap this up. People need to stop dying. And we need to denounce the rise in anti-Semitism around the nation. President Trump has positioned himself in a way where he's going to get more of the Jewish American support if the Democrats keep doing what they're doing. And number 3, this just looks bad for Chicago. You know, it's great that obviously the DNC is at Chicago because it obviously makes the city more money. But when it's being disrupted by protests, right, and the citizens that are there are still experiencing crime and how their resources have been drained because they're diverting funds to migrants, this is not a good position either. So, you know, again, the Democrats show why their policies don't work. Their policies have led to this increase of aggression between Israel and Hamas, where Hamas bombed Israel on October 7th. It's led to Russia being aggressive with Ukraine. It's led to Iran provoking and possibly going to aggressively attack Israel. This is what the Democratic policies have done. Their foreign policy is different than President Trump. So that's my mindset. What about you? What do you guys think about these protests that are happening at the DNC? Do you think that it's literally going to get to a point where people will be injured, places will start getting burned? What do you think about Kamala Harris and how she's handled this so far since becoming the presumptive nominee for her party? I want to hear what your answers are and more in the comment section below. Thank you for checking out the video today. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Stay grateful, stay focused, and stay true. Peace.